You're listening to Tim Jones and Chris Arps. You put your weed in here. Hello, my love. I heard you hate me. That you play me. All through the pouring rain again. The sun doesn't shine. Rainbows and waterfalls run through my mind. In the garden, I see the test of the presidency. Opportunity to lead. What do you think of it?
Yes, I think he'll squander it. I hope he doesn't, but I think he will. Democrats have a tendency to go the more restrictive route, and I can tell you, I went into the administration amid a lockdown with President Trump. There was no one itching to get out of that lockdown more than President Trump, because he realized the economic repercussions as a businessman, and also we learned through March 2020 and beyond the health repercussions, the missed cancer diagnoses, the kids who weren't in schools, the abuse that wasn't reported. We know that's typically reported in schools. There are trickle-down effects that are devastating. This is not March of 2020. We're in a different place. I really hope President Biden understands that.
I don't know that he understands much of anything, Chris. Remember, he came in with the promise that by now we'd be all back to normal. COVID would be eradicated. All you had to do was just trust good old Uncle Joe. Yeah. Well, it's not so easy to govern, especially in the face of a global pandemic.
And we know Uncle Joe is not there. Have you guys seen the meme on Facebook where it's a picture of Joe Biden saying, please stop calling him Brandon? He thinks that's his name now.
Goodness.
Well, one of the reasons we have Joe Biden, although I still question 81 million votes, story for another day, is the fact that some people in the great middle, as we call them, of America, literally and figuratively speaking, just couldn't deal with the crazy big old orange man and his Twitter feed. And it just got so deep in their consciousness. Well, we've got a guy who can help us unpack some of that syndrome that so infected the lunatic left. Charles Moscowitz joins us now, author, veteran radio host, social theorist, author of the new book, Sociology for Conservatives. Boy, is that timely. Charles, good afternoon. Welcome to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show. It's great to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tim and Chris. Really appreciate it.
Welcome, Charles.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Charles, I gotta ask you. Let's start at the end, which was the beginning of this year, and many people were thinking, "Oh, everything will calm down, emotionally, psychologically for me. It'll be so much better." What was it about Donald J. Trump that so just engendered otherwise normal people became just raving mad about him? What was it that he did to wake up the American consciousness for good or for bad?
Well, I mean, I think he did nothing to wake that up. I mean, I get into this in my book. I refer to it as collective effervescence. This idea that people suddenly, almost subconsciously, got this idea that there would be benefits to their hating Trump and there would be penalties if they expressed support for Trump, and that it was really something that was managed and stage managed by what President Trump accurately called the deep state. Now, there are two types of Trump haters. They're the actual haters of Trump, who are fully conscious and witting. They hate the fact that Trump stands for a very simple thing, which is making his nation first, making America first. Other politicians have given that lip service, but they didn't really mean it. Trump really meant it. He wanted to give power back to the sovereign people, and he wanted to put our nation first economically, put our nation first in terms of controlling our borders, our culture, in terms of foreign relations, avoiding wars, and basically standing for American nationalism and American sovereignty. And the international left and the international liberal establishment, which includes a lot of Republicans, they fear that, they despise that, and they felt that they had to take Trump out. The second segment of hatred was average people who have no idea why they hate Trump. They hear this drumbeat from the kind of the mockingbird media and from institutions, and it goes on constantly. It's like a Chinese water torture, drip, 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 drip. And they just feel, I mean, I'm trying to be polite here. I would say that people are conditioned. If you ask most average people who have this visceral reaction to Trump, why. They really can't explain it in any kind of coherent way. They don't know why. And that includes conservatives who hate Trump in spite of the fact that his presidency and his administration was the most conservative since Calvin Coolidge. I mean, if you look at the actual policies and the accomplishments of that administration, and yet they continue to have this deranged hatred that is inexplicable and it's irrational.
Hey, Charles, this is Chris Arps. Yeah, my partner alluded to it in his opening about how many conservatives, Republicans question Joe Biden's 80,000 votes, or 800,000 votes, whatever it is, 80 million votes, whatever it was that he won by. You bring up in your book, Sociology for Conservatives, a theory on why you believe so many Trump supporters believe that the 2020 election was stolen. Can you expound on that some?
Well, because I think that it was. And I think most Americans understand that, even whether they admit it consciously or not. Most Americans in their heart of hearts know that there was something very, very strange that happened at that during that election. I mean, anyone who watched the news on that night and watched the election returns was witnessing it right on national television, when all of a sudden, you'd see the numbers switch over with a flick of a mouse, where all of a sudden, Biden would be getting like 200,000 votes. And then subsequently, you had states who were violating their own state laws, which were passed by their state legislatures, which is the only authority that has the right to make election laws, Article 2 of the US Constitution. And they were going ahead and leaving the polls open. They were leaving the counting open. In the case of Pennsylvania, they just kept counting and counting and counting until they got the votes they needed. And there were all sorts of other improprieties. You had Zuckerberg basically writing a check out of his own bank account, him and his wife, for $420 million to give to these two shadowy organizations that were hiring people on the street, particularly in the so-called battleground states like Georgia and Arizona and Michigan, to do things like go to nursing homes and bundle votes. And there was all kinds of other stuff that happens. Now, I think that my response to people who doubt this is, therefore, if they think this was the most pristine election in American history, why don't they support these forensic audits? Let's get to the bottom of it, given the fact that even now, over 60% of Republicans believe it was stolen, probably about 30% of Democrats, and growing numbers of independents. So if the election was so perfect, let's have the audits. Let's do them in all of the states in question, and let's find out if it was so perfect. And if it was, then fine. Then we'll stand down and we'll know that. But until then, we're not going to know it. And there's a lot of suspicion.
Yeah, the obstruction is something else. It's something that's a sight to behold. Speaking to Charles Moscowitz, author, veteran radio host, social theorist, author of the brand new book, Sociology for Conservatives. Charles, what are the big takeaways from Sociology for Conservatives? Why people on the center-right side of the political spectrum need to purchase your book? What do they need to learn?
Well, the main thing that I've learned, because at my old age, I'm going in and getting a degree in sociology. And
fantastic.
Yeah, and I expected sociology to be liberal, but I didn't expect it to be as liberal as it is. There are many schools of sociology and sociological thought, and they include things like critical theory, which includes critical race theory, critical legal theory, conflict theory, which is directly from Marx, and other schools that are taught as part of the sociological instruction. And I realized that there is no conservative sociological theory. So I hope to begin the process of launching a conservative sociological theory that I hope is taken up by people that are a lot smarter than me, that are good social thinkers, and that will eventually develop this into a standard aspect of sociological education. Because conservatism, I argue, is the normal and natural state of affairs. It is not an ideology. It is a look at human nature and an emphasis on the more positive elements of human nature, while at the same time identifying the more negative. It doesn't try to change human nature. We're not doing what Barack Obama talked about when he said we want to transform the country. We want to transform humanity. The conservative idea is very institutional. We want to preserve good institutions, change or eliminate bad institutions, but yet do so in a manner that identifies that which is best to the human being and that which is moral.
Charles, we just have a couple of minutes left. Since you are writing a book on conservative social theory, I'd like to ask you, how could conservatism be more appealable to African Americans and other minorities?
Well, I think that it is appealable to African Americans. I mean, just based on the fact that Trump doubled his vote, particularly among Black men this last time. And I think he got about 40% of Hispanics, and he got a majority of Asians. And I think did well amongst all minority categories because, you know, minorities obviously want to participate in the American dream and the benefits of being an American as much as anyone else, if not more so. And that's what conservatism is, and that's what conservatism does. The left and the liberal social theorists, they offer basically Black people two things: welfare and abortion. You know, it's time for, you know, I think more and more people are waking up and realizing that self-interest is good, that achievement is good, that they want to, you know, benefit and be blessed by all of the same blessings as every other American wants.
Excellent. Thank you, Charles.
Fantastic indeed. Charles, where can folks find the book? Where is it available?
Thank you very much. It's available at Amazon Books, I believe Barnes & Noble Books, Sociology for Conservatives, An American Conservative Social Theory.
Charles, best of luck to you with your book and with your pursuing your degree.
Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's the perfect season to pick up Sociology for Conservatives, right, Charles? We hit everybody right at the beginning of the season of giving. They can give your book for Christmas or Hanukkah or any of the other holidays in this season. Charles, thanks so much for all the time, Dave. We'd love to have you back again sometime.
Anytime. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Very